Thank you all for joining Project Excite today for our Xplore workshop series. My name's Scott. I'm the student program coordinator for Project Excite and a senior. And today we're going to be talking about how Leif founded KidReports back in 2012, grew it to a national company with his team, and was acquired in late 2017 by Procare Software. So I'll give you a little bio about Leif, but first I'm going to explain how this is going to work. He's going to be doing a presentation, and then as you guys have questions or comments that come up, please submit them to the Q&A, and we will go through those at the end. And so we'll have plenty of time to go through it. And so Leif, I'll sort of give you a bit of an introduction, but feel free to add to it. After founding KidReports, where he served as the CEO, excuse me for 1 second. Sorry about that. KidReports is a SaaS platform for childcare providers that connects parents and childcare centers in real time. They were acquired by Procare in late 2017, where Leif served as the VP of Engineering for the KidReports division. He holds a BS in Computer Science from CU and an MBA from the University of Denver. Leif, I'll pass it over to you now, and then anybody, as long as you have questions, submit them to the Q&A, and we'll go through them at the end. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks, Scott. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Hopefully you'll all see that slideshow there. Scott, is that coming up?
Yes, it is.
All right. Yeah, so my name's Leif Ullman, as Scott said, and gonna go through a quick slideshow here talking about first my background. So as Scott said, I have an undergraduate degree in computer science. I spent the first 12 years of my career working in defense contracting. I worked as a software engineer, a software architect, and as a team manager for various software projects, doing defense and intelligence related applications. I then went back to University of Denver for their executive MBA program, completed my MBA there in 2009. And in 2012 is when I wanted to start a business. So that's kind of when KidReports came about. Actually, we were working on it through 2011, and 2012 is when we took it live. So a little bit about what we're going to go through here today. This is going to kind of focus on the startup life cycle, and there's really 5 phases here. First, identifying a problem and coming up with a solution for it. Once you have that, then coming up with the minimum viable product that fits that solution, taking that minimum viable product to the market, and then adjusting it as the market needs change and as you understand them better. Then scaling the company and the product so that you can reach a number of customers to where you become interesting from an acquisition standpoint. And finally, maturity, which is really the end of the startup life cycle, where you're either going to be acquired by a larger company or IPO or have some sort of exit event that typically provides a return for your investors. So we really started this back in 2011, and this is when I was still working at my defense contractor day job. And we, a couple of friends and I, wanted to get together and start a business. So, first of all, we needed an idea. And the way we came up with this idea was we created this idea summit. And it's kind of analogous now to the startup weekend events where you get a bunch of people together and they brainstorm on different ideas and come up with solutions for those problems. But there wasn't really anything like that back, almost 10 years ago. So we got a group together. We got away in the mountains. We got a place in the mountains, and we basically started brainstorming different ideas. First day was coming up with about 30 different concepts. The second day, we whittled it down to about 3. And on the third day, we settled on KidReports as the main idea, really because I just had my son about 8 months prior, and it really was something that I could see using personally and could really empathize with the need as a new father. So we thought this was a great idea, but we didn't want to just jump right in. So then we moved to the validation phase. We did a number of surveys with parents, both prospective and current parents, as well as surveys with a number of childcare centers, where we went out to about probably 10 or 15 childcare centers, gave them about 10 questions of what we were thinking, and tried to figure out, is this something they thought would be useful, and would they pay for it? And also the personal interviews, were something that we did if the surveys were positive and we wanted to get more information. Turned out everyone really liked the idea. So we said, okay, that's enough for us to start moving forward with some market research. At that point, there wasn't really any competition directly. We saw some adjacent products where there were some apps, that people were using for tracking information about your child. And these were basically apps that you could download as a parent and use, but we didn't see anything that was being used in the broader childcare space as far as direct competition. And this was probably the second quarter of 2011 when we were doing this competition, or this competition research. So, given that there was no competition and that everyone said this is a good idea, we said, let's move forward. So at that point, we started building our MVP. And when I say we, this is primarily myself working on the technology on nights and weekends for the remainder of 2011, building out what we considered would be a minimum viable product to bring to the market to get feedback from our first customers. We rolled it out, I want to say, the end of 2011, and we had some beta customers, some childcare centers that we were introduced to through people in our founding group that helped us immensely. They were basically beta testing the product, finding bugs, giving us features that we didn't even think of, because we were approaching it from a parent standpoint, and childcare centers, are going to use it and tell us exactly what they need. So that was hugely helpful in refining the feature set as we were really polishing what that MVP was going to be. We did get some initial funding. Assessment to just keep a pulse on the market as we were getting ready to go to launch, and we started seeing competitors emerging. I think at that point, within the 6-month span from when we had done our initial research to when we did our follow-on research, we found 2 or 3 other products that were targeting this same market. So we realized, we need to hurry up and get this out there, but we also realized, this is probably a good idea, because now we're starting to see other people coming out with the same concept, and it just further validated what we were doing. So we launched the product in March of 2012 at the National Child Care Association conference in Las Vegas. It was a very, very well received launch. We were one of the few, if not only, technology company at this conference, and childcare is typically a very slow to adapt and slow to evolve industry, as we learned. So a lot of the products that were there were shiny new thing. And so we had, I think, at one point, 50 people waiting in line just to demo our product and to see what we had. There were some concerns. Market timing was one of them, in terms of, were we too early? Were we right on time with when this needed to be launched? And education, a lot of the market, especially in the childcare space, not having that technology understanding, really needed to be educated about what we were doing, how the product worked, and what it was going to do for their business. Some of their concerns, do they need internet? This was something that a lot of people asked us, and everyone had the internet. And it turned out, back in 2012, many of these childcare centers did not have internet or, even a basic level of technology. There was also concern about whether this was something that was going to be adopted on a widespread basis, because there was a video camera product that had come out a couple years ago, and everyone had jumped in to this video camera, basically streaming webcams, and then there was a huge backlash, and it had kind of gone away. So people looked at our product and said, is this going to be another fiasco with what we saw with streaming webcams about 4 or 5 years ago? And then in general, there's just a fear of the unknown, something new, something that's going to change the way you do business, and being the first one to adopt a product. So after we launched, we started making money right away, which was surprising. Basically our first month we had 2 paying customers, and we were pretty thrilled with that. People started signing up and using it, and we then had to sit down and have a serious discussion of, what are we going to do? Are we going to move forward with this on a full-time basis, or can we continue doing this part-time? Because we had basically all been doing this, as a moonlighting project. We all had day jobs. We were all working on this nights and weekends and using our vacation time to do this. And that gets challenging, especially when you start getting real customers who are paying you money and want support. We realized we did want to move forward, but we needed some money. So we said, let's go raise some funding. We started going the angel route first, but we found it was challenging to get traction. So we couldn't find a lead angel. We were raising in a difficult time for a business that wasn't perceived to be something that had billion-dollar potential. I think we were raising right after the Instagram acquisition by Facebook, and we actually had some comments from potential investors when we were pitching that they were looking for the next Instagram. And we kind of smiled and said, well, those are very rare, but we think we can be a solid win. We're just not going to be that billion-dollar company. So we tried that for a couple months. Eventually we pivoted, went the friends, family, and fools route, as it's called, and we were successfully able to raise $200,000 by the end of 2012. At that point, we brought on 3 advisors to our advisory board, redid our operating agreement, and realized that this was now a legitimate business with multi-$100,000 of investment from friends and family. And if we were going to run this, we had to do it. We had to do it the right way. We couldn't really be flying by the seat of our pants anymore. At that point, 2 of the 6 co-founders were able to become employees and pursue the business full time. And this was also a difficult discussion to have, because everyone basically had to look at where they were at from their family budget. Go on basically a very limited salary. All of us were pretty well compensated and mid-career, so shifting from that to a startup where you're going to make some money, but we were basically paying ourselves enough to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. We weren't making getting rich off of this or anything like that. So 2 of us were able to jump in mid 2012 and pursue this full time. And what we did at the end of all of this, kind of late 2012, is we sat down and decided that from a strategic perspective, we had to focus on where we were going to be the most valuable in the childcare market. So what we decided is that we wanted to go after the enterprise segment of the market, which is really the big players who have 50 to 100 childcare centers and up. We call the large scale enterprises. And we wanted to provide a high value, medium, high cost product. We didn't want to be selling for 50 cents in the app store, and we didn't want to be providing a low value product. We definitely wanted something that people would pay for but gave them a lot of features. And I should mention, I think Scott mentioned this, but if you have any questions during this, as they come up, just type them in the Q&A tab and we'll answer them all when we get to the end of the presentation. So phase 3 basically is our product market fit. So we had now raised money. We had 2 employees full-time on the project, or on the product development. And we were now working to grow sales and to figure out exactly what our customers wanted. So the first challenge we needed to overcome was, how do we get our product in front of our customer base? And I came from a technology background. My other co-founder, who became an employee, came from a corporate banking background. So neither of us were really a sales or marketing focused team. And so this is something we had to learn as we were going. A lot of the marketing channels that we tried conferences, which were basically industry conferences focused directly on childcare. We did a number of direct mail campaigns. We did pay-per-click ads on Google, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. And we also worked on refining the product. So one of the key differentiators that helped us win early on was being able to talk directly to our customers. And when you have 20 customers and they can call you on your cell phone at any time of the day, you'll listen to them because they're paying you, but they're also going to give you very valuable feedback about what your product does well and what it doesn't do well and what you'd like it to do. We found that the best marketing channel was conferences, because that let us get in front of the customers and demo the product directly to them. It was hard to communicate the value via mail or via a Google ad, because what we were doing was so new that they just didn't. So when we could demo the actual product and show them that you can record your child's activities as a teacher in a child care center on a tablet, and then parents can get emails or push alerts on their phone, that's what caused the light bulb to go off for these child care centers and really helped us close the sales. We did see a lot of competition emerging during these 2 years. I think at one point we did a market assessment, I want to say late 2013, early 2014. And I think there were about 10 or 12 products that were doing what we did. And so, it was interesting to see how the market kind of exploded with all of these other competitors, trying to capture the market, because the market moves so slowly that everyone's out there trying to sell these childcare centers, but they're simply not buying because of the fact that they take so long to adopt a product. We also followed the innovator versus follow fast. So if you've studied those 2 models in your entrepreneurship classes or read about them, we tried to innovate as much as possible. One of the innovations that we did was introducing security controls around how our product worked, which was something that no one was doing and everyone was asking for. We also made it a very customizable interface, which was one of our key differentiators, and I think to this day remained one of our key differentiators, where a lot of our other competitors were simply providing static activities that could be recorded by the teachers. In addition, there were times when we had to follow fast. When a competitor rolled out a feature and we had a customer saying, we really like your product, but we're looking at product X because they do this, then we would decide, is it appropriate to add that feature to our system, because that's what went between those 2 models as we needed to in order to land the business we were doing. So phase 3, so we thought we were going to break even with our first funding round, but we did not. We continued growing, but we had run out of our round two to make a hard decision whether we were going to continue to build upon it or whether we were going to shut it down. We had to have a discussion with our advisors.
Hey, Leif.
Yes.
Sorry to cut you off. Your audio is kind of coming in and out. Is there a microphone that you're covering up, or?
No, I'm on my laptop. I'll keep my hands away from it. I don't know if I'm touching it or not.
Maybe that's what it is. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, let me know if it keeps going on, and I'll try and switch over to a mic or something. So in mid 2014, we sat down with our advisors and basically, had a discussion as to whether we should shut down or not. And we felt like we were very, very close to getting to that break-even point. We had just not quite gotten there yet due to the way the industry was very slow to adopt. So what we did at that point is we took on some debt financing, and that helped us continue growing the business. So finally, we got to 2014 Q4, and we hit that cash flow break-even point, which was really the milestone we were shooting for in order to be able to say, okay, we're sustainable now. We're not going to be losing money. We're not obviously paying ourselves a lot, but we're at least able to keep growing organically from this point on. So our scale phase was really 2015 and 2016. So this is when we started getting some big clients, and this is what really started creating a snowball effect of growth. So in spring 2015, we got our first franchise client, and this was a franchise based out of Florida that had 25 centers, and they actually approached us to create a private labeled version of our product, where we didn't have the KidReports brand, but we had their childcare center brand rolled out to the App Store, and they would require all of their centers to adopt it. And this was a huge deal for us. And so once we got that, we now had a win under our belt. And this is really what we had been trying to do for the first few years was go after these large enterprise clients. We were able to leverage that win into our first corporate client. And this is a large corporate they're based out of Arizona, over 150 centers. And we took the model we did for the franchise client and rolled that into the corporate client as part of our sales pitch. And they loved it, and they've been a client, for the last 5 years, and they're very happy with us. Around this time, we saw new competition coming out, and this new competition, now we were starting to see competition that was actually getting significant venture capital in the millions of dollars. Venture capitalists were starting to see this industry as an emerging area that they wanted to invest in. One of our big competitors was Brightwheel. They appeared on Shark Tank and got a lot of press out of that. We also saw a number of other competitors go out of business. There were probably 2 or 3 companies that had been around for several years that closed down. And then we saw our first exit, a company called Tadpoles. That was one of our early competitors. They were acquired, I believe, in 2016. At that time, we were also able to make our first hire. In 2015, late 2015, we were able to hire a support and account management person. And that was specifically to support the large corporate client that we had brought on. And we knew that as they rolled out their centers, we were going to be able to sustain continued employee growth. Scott, is my audio coming in better now?
Your audio is great. Thank you.
Okay. So phase 4, this is when we started having discussions about exiting, and we were starting to see, signs that the market was moving towards greater investment, greater consolidation, and there was now a potential with us getting these large wins that we were going to start to become an attractive target for an acquisition. So we started having initial discussions early 2016 with two companies. One was called Smart Care, which was a well-funded SaaS-based childcare management system. And they originally were interested in us, but then they ended up going a different route, and they purchased a competitor in their space. Now, childcare management systems were kind of a perfect complement for us. So what we did, we were basically the parent communication system where we would send photos and videos to parents and let them see what their kids were doing during the day. The management systems were what the childcare centers used for payroll, tuition processing, all of the back office record keeping. So there was a natural fit for us to look at an acquisition with a management software provider. The other one that we spoke with was called Procare, and they ended up being the eventual acquirer, but we talked to them very early on in 2016, and they were not interested at that point. And actually, when we talked to them, they didn't see the need for what we were building, but then they decided they were going to try and build it on their own. And so they actually went out and hired a contracting firm to build a competing product to ours. And luckily that didn't go well, but that was their first approach into the market. In 2016, late 2016, we got our second big corporate win. This was an organization out of Georgia area. Childcare Network. They signed up as a corporate client, and they had over 250 centers. And so, that was a huge win for us. And at that point, now we had 2 of the top 10 corporate childcare providers as clients. And given that win, we were now able to hire a full-time engineer in Q4 of 2016. And now we had a full-time staff of 4 people. So put together a little slide of our growth metrics. So you can kind of see here in 2012, at the end of the year, we had 19 centers and we started slowly growing. But in 2015, 2016, 2017, we were close to 800 by the end of 2017. And that was really where we got acquired, was that 800 center mark, with future growth anticipated, much beyond that, because this was basically the number of centers we had rolled out. But when we got these corporate clients, they committed to roll all their centers out, but they didn't roll them all out at once. So if they had 250 centers, they might be rolling out 30 a month, for 10 months or something like that. So phase 5, this is really the maturity of the company and our eventual exit. So this is when we started getting a lot of interest from venture capitalists, private equity, as well as strategic companies in our space. I probably, towards the end of 2016 and early 2017, I was probably getting a call every other week from a private equity firm asking, if we were looking to be acquired, what our numbers were, all of that stuff. We got a few from venture capital, but they were more looking to make a investment where we were then going to, take the company a lot bigger, but still be running it. And the strategics were companies in our space like Procare and Smart Care that wanted to buy us and bolt us on to their existing product. The market started shifting at this point as well. So what we were seeing is that more companies were going towards an all-in-one solution. So this was the idea that you were going to have a product in the childcare space that did the management, did the parent engagement, might even do other things like curriculum, and then child assessments. All of these different products that were being used by childcare centers were starting to consolidate. Because prior to that, a few years when we started, it was all niche products. So you would have 4 different software products to meet all of your needs, and it eventually evolved to now there being this all-in-one approach. We started seeing more well-funded competition. I think Brightwheel raised another 10 million at that point, and we knew that they were basically trying to dominate the entire market. So we started having some preliminary talks with acquirers. There were 2 companies that we, Smart Care and another company that we were originally talking with, but then those kind of fell off the table. And then Procare approached us and said they wanted to work with us. And they actually came back to us in 2017 And were very conciliatory, because they realized that they had kind of left a bad taste in our mouth with our first talk. But then we started having really promising discussions with them. Their CEO had changed, and they were very much looking to make an investment and work with a company in our space to add parent engagement to their portfolio. So what we were able to do is negotiate a partnership with them. And this was basically the ability for us to let them sell our product, but not acquire us. And what we wanted to do was build that partnership so that we could determine if they were the right company to acquire us, or if we wanted to be acquired somewhere else. We had to give them the option to buy us, and basically the ROFO is the right of first refusal, or right of first offer. So what that means is that when we signed the partnership, if some other company made us an offer to buy us, Procare had the ability to make the first offer and eventually, and basically buy us first if that was the way they wanted to go. So we signed the partnership with them, and at that point, now we had this huge distribution channel. So at the time we signed it, I think we had about 500 or 600 clients across the country. Procare had at that point, I think 20 to 25,000 childcare centers. So they were, an order of magnitude larger than us. And we knew if they started selling us, our sales were going to just, go about 10 times what they were doing right now. So we decided, do we want to raise money and ramp up to be able to support the growth that we're going to see coming down the road, or do we want to exit and sell the company? And so we decided that the best option for us was to exit. And we eventually negotiated a deal with Procare where we would sell the company to them. We closed the deal in November of 2017, and myself and my main co-founder agreed to stay on for 2 years as part of our deal. So we basically remained employees to help run the KidReports division for 2 years after that. So let's see here. So what we did then is, we helped grow the company. So you'll see, end of 2018, we had over 2,000 centers using us. At the end of 2019, it was over 4,000. So we basically took it from 700 centers or so at the end of 2017 and quadrupled that in 2 years, and made it a very large profit center for Procare. Procare as a company has evolved quite a bit in those 2 years. They've become very focused on M&A activities. They've actually acquired, I think after they acquired us, there were 2 or 3 other companies they bought. And so they've been learning how to grow as both an organically growing company, as well as bolting on and integrating these new companies into their culture and into their organization. And Procare also has grown location-wise. They previously were based out of Medford, Oregon, but since they acquired us and started growing, they set up a headquarters in Denver, downtown Denver, and that's now, I think, their largest office. The other interesting thing about the growth is that the engineering team that I had been running eventually was transitioned to a new team, and a new manager was brought on, and it became more of an institutionalized team as opposed to kind of a product on its own. Now it's part of a broader engineering organization, across the whole Procare enterprise. And lastly, the founders who moved to Procare took on new roles. So my role when I was with Procare was the VP of engineering for the KidReports division. I would also assist with other technology challenges that the company was facing across the broader organization. But I actually am no longer with Procare. So I left the company about 3 months ago. We had finished our obligation under the contract at the end of this year, so early 2020. We were basically done with our contract. and I decided I wanted to move on. So I'm currently taking a professional sabbatical, looking at some consulting opportunities, and taking some time with my family. The other founder who moved on, he took a different role with the company and moved into a senior VP role where he's now overseeing all of the account management. So, so he landed more at the broader corporate level, and has been really successful in that role. So that is my whole discussion. Appreciate you listening, and yeah, any questions? I see there's one here. What is M&A? M&A is mergers and acquisitions. So that's really when companies, either buy other companies or merge with them to create a new company. I see something in the chat here from Karen. How to approach large corporate clients if they're not coming to you? So that is a very tough one. We had some corporate clients that we worked on landing as customers for multiple years. And basically they were companies that, first we had to get on their radar. And so we would have to make them aware of us. And this was done in a variety of ways. We had some companies that we would just simply cold call and try and get a hold of their C-level. We were targeting the C-levels for all of these. Others where we would go to conferences where we knew there was going to be a number of corporate clients that we're trying to target. One of these was the National Association for the Education of Young Children conference, which was the biggest industry conference. So we would go to that one, and we would try to find events where we could, meet those C-level folks. So we would actually just walk around the conference floor, and we would look them, stalk them on LinkedIn, find out what they looked like, and try and introduce ourselves, and see if we could talk about our product. Or if we saw them come by our booth, we would have that information to where we knew who they were, and we could tailor the sales pitch because we were trying to land a corporate client. So a lot of them took a long time. I mean, some of them took years where they just were not ready to move quickly. They didn't want to be the first one in the market, and you had to continue to talk to them and have discussions with them, get into pilots with them. A lot of them wanted pilots where we would start a single center using our software, let them pilot it for 6 months till they got comfortable with it, and then discuss, does it make sense to roll this out to the broader organization? So hopefully that helps, Karen. Let's see, Scott has a question. Can you talk more about the transition from being the founder to handing it off? Sure, so that's, it's tough. I mean, you go from doing everything and being able to make decisions quickly, and to having to work with a bigger organization. And I think the upside is you have more resources. You have the ability to leverage the financial and human resources of the bigger company. So that's huge. If you're having problems with the technology, or if you need to make hires or things like that, you can typically lean on some people there. The downside is you don't get to make all the decisions and move as quickly as you used to. You now have a lot more red tape. You have a lot more people who need to approve things. It's not your company anymore. And I think, we were ready for that. We knew when we started the company that it was eventually going to be sold, and moved on, to a more institutional leadership. And so that wasn't something that was hard for us. I think there's some companies where people sell the company and they think they're still gonna, get to run it the way used to, and we knew that was never really part of the deal. Once we sold it, it was somebody else's company, and we, we're now employees of them. But I still think, there are challenges in adapting to, running at 100 miles an hour and doing everything, to all of a sudden slowing down and having to work with other people, and having to not be able to just do the things that you think you need to do to get the job done. And so I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is adapting to that slower pace and that more collaborative work environment, when you're so used to doing it all yourself.
Well, if we've got any more questions, now's the time, anybody. Well, we've got Leif, but thank you very much for answering my question. It's always curious how it feels when sort of you build a product and you've built the company and then you hand it off to somebody else and sort of let them go with it. But I can imagine, kind of like you said, that pace of work and the speed that it was being done is just so drastically different. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you would like to add to your presentation, or sort of any questions that we're not asking that you think we should?
I think one of the things that people have asked me is, would I do it again? And absolutely. But obviously, if I do it again, it's going to be a lot different. I think, the thing you learn the first time around is you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you're just going to have to adapt to it and keep going. And everyone says, oh, if I did it again, I'd do it differently, but I realize now, if you do it again, you're going to make different mistakes, and that's okay. And I think, doing it again, starting a different company again, would be a lot of fun, just for, the ability to take all the lessons learned from this time around and not make them the second time, but then figure out, what are the challenges I'm going to run into, and hopefully, grow it faster, but then encounter different problems and solve them.
Yeah. And it looks like we had two more questions come in on the chat, if you want to handle those.
Okay, let's see. Chat.
And then Joy Willett, while you're looking for those, asked, what kind of consulting are you doing currently?
Yeah, so consulting, mostly like startup consulting. There's a couple organizations in town that I've been helping with as an entrepreneur in residence, and also just doing some, kind of business advice and business mentoring consulting. Okay, so from Karen, what are the channels to pursue VCs and angels? How to pitch effectively your VP's plans? So it's different. I mean, VCs and angels are very different targets, and it's also changed a lot. I would say the landscape of funding has evolved drastically over the last 8 years since we were first seeking funding. I think, an angel round used to be a couple 100,000. Now they're pushing, close to $1 million for like a pre-seed round or a seed round. And seed rounds can now be, several million. And now VCs, instead of looking at a 1 to 2 million, they're looking typically 5 and up. So, those are all different in terms of the funding levels that they are targeting. As far as pursuing them, I think the best option is probably your network. If you have a network, a lot of the angels that we were introduced to were through my network, some through my connections from the DU Executive MBA program, others from connections down in Colorado Springs, which is where I live. But there's also, the reaching out, just searching the internet for what angel groups or what venture capitalists are out there, especially if you can target those organizations that are really in line with what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to do, a blockchain startup or something, then find an angel group or a VC that has a fund that focuses specifically on that sort of technology. Pitching effectively, that's harder. I mean, that's kind of an art form. Can you, you're really selling yourself more so than you're selling the idea. I think the idea is very important. The idea gets you in the door and will get the interest of the investor. But the investors, this was true a while ago. I believe it's still true today. Investors typically invest in a team or a founder. They don't invest in an idea, so they'd much rather have an A founder with a C idea or a B idea than have, an A idea with a C founder, because they believe that the founders who have that ability to pivot when necessary, adapt the product, and make the decisions quickly that need to be made to be successful are the ones that, are going to give them the best return, as opposed to having, this great idea, but they're not sure if the founder can actually deliver the results that they want to deliver. So I think, the pitching is really more about how you sell yourself as the right person to take whatever idea or business, that you're presenting to the broader market and really be successful with it.
Great. Well, with that, I think we'll start to wrap it up. And so just to let everybody know, this video is live streamed to Facebook, so it will live there for a while, and then we will be posting it to our YouTube as well and our website. And if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to Project Excite. We've got some really great other workshops lined up. And so, Leif, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this today and for sharing your story and answering some questions.
Absolutely. And thanks for having me, Scott. And thank you for everyone who watched it.
Well, thank you so much. All right. Peace out.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.